everybody. Welcome to Rachel's Reviews. We are really excited today. We know everybody is quarantined in their house and they're looking to Disney Plus and Netflix to provide them with entertainment and stress relief. So we are going to help you out today. We are going to give you 5 hidden gems each, so 10 total, that you can watch on Disney Plus and that you can enjoy, and it'll be really fun. And I'm film critic Rachel Wagner, and I'm joined by my friend Ryan Cams here.
Hey Rachel, it's always a pleasure to be here with you. I know we all are going through very difficult times. I don't want to make this whole thing all about what's going on, because that's not what this is about. However, in the words of a very wise man, Harvey Dent from The Dark Knight, the night is darkest just before the dawn, and I can guarantee you the dawn is coming.
Yeah, we'll get it through it. We'll get through it together. And if any of you are sick, please, hopefully you have people that are helping you, and but know that we're praying for you and we're thinking about you, and hopefully, like I said, we can provide some more entertainment for you to get your mind off of all of this madness. And so yeah, it's overwhelming for all of us. It really is. So what we decided to do is we're going to pick 5, like I said, and these aren't, for me at least, they're not in a numerical order. These are just 5. These aren't like my top 5. And we have been talking about it, and if people like this, if you think it's fun, then we could come back next week and do it again, because there's so many hidden gems on Disney Plus.
Yeah, I was looking at the catalog earlier, and it's just like, how long does this thing go?
Yeah.
It's like millions of hours. Like, be careful. You could get lost in here.
Yeah, there's plenty of time. So you could be like what's that Brendan Fraser movie where they're under the ground all this time, and then they come out. They're from like the 1960s, and they come out to civilization.
That would be the remake of Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Oh, is that it? Brendan Fraser loves making movies where he is some kind of person from another dimension, that's like because he's he loves playing like fish out of water parts, because he was in George to the Jungle, he was in Encino Man, he was in
The Mummy.
Yeah, right.
He was in Looney Tunes Back in Action. He was,
yeah.
And then all of a sudden he disappeared. And it's like, I heard he was in the Doom Patrol show, which I haven't seen, but he just up and vanished.
Yeah, I know. I think he had some bad health, so that's
so here's to hoping wherever he is, he's doing well.
Yes. Anyway, so all right, my first choice is a little movie that I think is very underrated. It's called The Kid. This is a movie that came out in 2000, and it was right when it was the year after The Sixth Sense. And so it was when Bruce Willis kind of had a resurgence, and it's him with another child actor, kind of like with Sixth Sense, but this is totally different. And I think it's really clever. So basically, he is this bad man of business, like we like to say on the Hallmarkies podcast. He's an advertising exec, and he's super cold, and he gets these dirty politicians off without anything, and he's this publicity guy, and he's the worst. And one day,
the literal worst.
Yeah, one day he comes home, and he finds this little boy in his house. And it turns out that it is himself as a 12-year-old. And the thing I just love about it is that he thinks his life is so cool. Like he's just on top of the world. He's super rich. He's super whatever. And his 12-year-old self thinks he's a total loser. He's like, the little kid's like, I grew up, I can't fly planes. I don't have a wife. I don't have a dog. I'm a loser. and so, he's super annoyed, but then of course their bond kind of grows. and it's just a really sweet movie. And Lily Tomlin plays his secretary, and she's hilarious, of course. Emily Mortimer is his kind of long-suffering girlfriend character. Anyway, and there she's sweet, and I really like the whole sort of thought experiment of it. Like, what if I met my 12-year-old self? Would she think I'm a loser, or would she think I was pretty cool? I don't know. And so I've always thought it was a very underrated little film, and I've always really enjoyed it. Have you seen it by any chance?
I remember seeing it like back in 2008 or 9.
Uh-huh.
I remember there's this one scene in a diner where Bruce Willis's kid self is like ordering a bunch of unhealthy food, and Bruce Willis is like, get him some healthy stuff. Like, I
Yeah.
think I'm talking about the right movie,
Yeah.
but
Because he's really embarrassed about the fact that his 12-year-old self is just chubby, and it kind of all builds up to this big memory that changed his life, of when he gets super badly bullied, and also his relationship with his mother is really bad. And I so yeah, I don't know. I think it has been a bit since I have seen it. I will be honest, but I've just always really enjoyed it, and so I would say it's a hidden gem on Disney Plus.
I'm looking up the information now, and this is actually directed by John Turteltaub, who
Mm-hmm.
has a long-standing relationship with Disney. Like, he directed the National Treasure movies, which I
Mm-hmm.
love to pieces. They're very dumb, but I love them nonetheless. So this, you've sold me, Rachel. I
Yes.
think I'm going to be adding the kid to my watch list, and I'm going to check this out.
Yeah, and let us know on Twitter or wherever what you thought. Maybe next week, if we do this again, we could report back if we've seen any of them.
Yeah, well, I'm adding it to the old watch list right
Okay,
now,
because
so I
John
won't be able to
Turteltaub,
miss it.
he also directed While You Were Sleeping, which is one of my favorite romantic comedies. Absolutely love that movie.
He
So
also directed The Meg, about Jason Statham fighting a
uh,
gigantic shark.
yeah, yeah. So what's
It
your
cannot be said that Mr. Turtletop does not have range.
yeah, that's very true. So what's your first on your list?
So just a quick little disclaimer before I jump into my list. I picked one from all the categories that are on Disney Plus. I've picked one from just the main Disney like stream, one from Pixar, one from Marvel, one from Star Wars, and one from
Ah,
National Geographic. Just
that's an
so
interesting
I
strategy.
I believe in variety.
Yeah,
So if we're going to be in under quarantine for the foreseeable future, you
smart.
might as well, spice it up a little bit. So for my Disney one, I chose one of my all-time favorites, Treasure Planet. This
Hmm.
came out in 2002, I believe. And this was directed by the same two guys who I believe directed The Little Mermaid and later Moana.
Right.
Uh, Rachel, I'm sure you're.
No, that's
I'm.
correct.
Oh, I'm.
You
Someone called Christian Harloff put me on movie trivia schmodown.
you nailed it. Ron Clements and John Musker were the directors. They did The Great Mouse Detective, Little Mermaid, Hercules, Aladdin. They're they're legends. And the interesting thing about this movie, if you want a little backstory, is that they were super passionate about Treasure Planet from the beginning, when they were first pitching ideas before the Renaissance, even before Little Mermaid. They wanted to make this space Treasure Planet movie, and they pushed it and pushed it and pushed it, and then finally they they basically like made a deal that if we make Hercules, then we'll finally let you make Treasure Planet. And it still took a while, I think, to make it, but they finally got their space. They worked for like 20 years to get the space Treasure Planet movie.
And
made.
unfortunately, it bombed. It
It
only made
did.
$100 million on a $140 million budget. So
Yeah,
which was
it's kind of
very
a
sad.
yeah,
It
and
was
it's kind of a
I
weird movie to market because it's just such a strange idea. But
This is true. Yes.
because why are they flying around in space? Why don't they need helmets or like what is happening? But like if you just kind of I guess suspend your disbelief, then
That's what
yeah,
I always do. But
yeah,
I also believe Treasure Planet was also a victim of bad timing because this came on the tail end of the Disney Renaissance, which in
right,
many regards was like the peak time for like Disney in terms of creativity.
right,
Like they could do no wrong from like the early 90s up to the mid 2000s. Like they were just on top of their game. And I believe Treasure Planet and Atlantis, basically that crowd just got just got unfairly compared to those, and they were seen as lesser. Now, I'll be the first to admit that Treasure Planet is not perfect. There's definitely some awkward animation. The 3D mixed with the 2D animation, in many cases, doesn't work. But what I always come back to is the story. It's got a great story and it's got a great message. It's got Joseph Gordon-Levitt before he would go on to become Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I believe before this he was only known as being in Halloween H2O. So that's definitely a step up for Mr. Gordon-Levitt. But I love the father-son dynamic that he has with the captain. I can't remember his name.
uh,
It's
John Silver's.
Thank you, Captain John Silver, and I just love the design of him with the cyborg eye and the hand that can turn into a gun and a sword and just it's great stuff. But I just love the story and I love the music too. This movie has two great songs, "I'm Still Here" and "Always Know Where You Are," which was sung by John Rzeznik. I believe I said his name
Mm-hmm.
right. Who's the lead singer of the Goo Goo Dolls? I listen to those songs regularly today. So I think this is partially due to nostalgia, but
Mm-hmm.
I've always loved Treasure Planet. I get that it has problems, but it's one of those movies that if you give it a chance, I think it's definitely worth it.
For sure. I it's eh, there's some problems I have a little bit with the pacing and there I do wish it had actually more songs. I think that would have been nice. But I think it's a classic story. Treasure Island is a classic story for a lot of reasons,
Indeed.
and I think that they do a good job with the heart. Some of the comic relief could be better, but
I will give you that as a Martin Short fan. He definitely gets a little grating, but
yeah, and but the heart, especially between Jim and Long John, is Long John Silver's is really quite good. And yeah, the other thing that hurt Treasure Planet is that you have the rise of 2D animation. I mean, you have the real like season of CG animation. But I mean, that was the same year that Shrek came out. It was the same year that it was just in between like Finding Nemo and Monsters Incorporated and just this treasure trove of Pixar at its heyday. So that was also kind of bad luck for sure that they had. But I think that it's a classic story for a reason, and I think the animation is very beautiful and it's very creative. Nobody can deny it that's for sure. This like really strange idea of traditional ships in space. Like what? But
I will acquiesce in that regard and saying like watching this back in 2020 and like seeing it, I'm like, how are they like? Is there like a force field giving them oxygen? Like, how does this work? But physics aside, this is a movie that I
yeah,
always do come back to.
yeah,
It's one of my fondest childhood memories. My dad took me to see this
oh,
when I was like 5 or 6, and it's
nice.
always stuck with me. So
Yeah, it's definitely it's a good choice. Very good. All right. So my My next choice is a comedy. We all need to laugh through these stressful times,
Because
and
if we don't, we'll cry.
yeah. Mine is a little comedy called Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. I went
Oh,
into
that's the Steve Carell one, right?
Yes. So I went into this movie extremely skeptical because I love the book. The book is so sweet and just this lovely message. And I thought, oh, they're just going to turn it into the slapstick. They're going to ruin the book. And hey, and I went, but then I watched it and I was pleasantly surprised. Yes, they throw in a lot of ridiculous slapstick, but I felt like they actually pulled it off and I was laughing. And it keeps that sweetness from the book. I mean, it's a very short book, so they had to add a lot and whatever. But basically this it's just this kid who, like, he gets gum in his hair and everybody's mean to him and he's frustrated with his brother and his sister and his mom and so he wishes that he could a uh, have a perfect day. So then the next day, he finds that basically, like, everybody is uh it, that anyway, he sees his wishes like come true, but of course, like most of these kind of things, it causes a lot of problems for his family, and by the end, he wants to have things back to uh, the way that they were, and it's just really cute and funny. There's a hilarious scene where his older brother goes to the DMV to get his driver's license, and Jennifer Coolidge is the instructor, and she is so funny. And Steve Carell is funny, and Jennifer Garner's great. And so there's even an appearance by the Thunder Down Under, which is kind of hilarious. Because anyway, so yeah, I enjoy it, and I think you should give it a shot. It'd be a really fun movie to watch as a family and just all laugh together.
I think I may have to take your word on it, Rachel, because when I saw the trailer for this movie, this never happens to me. I try and give every movie I see a chance, but when I saw the trailer for this movie, I cringed. I
Yeah,
cringed so hard because this felt like the most cheap slapstick you could possibly find. Plus, it's dated by even today's standards. Like the older brother's like, I'm hashtag blessed, and I'm just like, who says that? Like, who says that in real life on
yeah,
Earth? So I guess my 2014 self did judge the book by the cover, but seeing as you have discussed it and have given it such praise, I think I will give it a chance.
yeah.
I,
I
this
mean,
this is something that I never do. Like when I see a trailer, no matter how bad it is, I'm like, I've seen bad
yeah,
trailers to excellent movies, and I've seen great trailers to bad movies. It's just a trailer, but for this one, I just made an
yeah,
exception. But now, since you've
yeah,
talked it up so much, I think I may have to take a leap of faith.
yeah. Like, I feel like there's not very many quality live action comedies for families. There's like some of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid movies are fine. There's a few every once in a while. Of course, you have something like Paddington, which is the best. But
Oh, of
this is
course.
not on that level. I'm not saying it, but a lot of it is like Playing with Fire or just these movies that are just not good. And I feel like it's pretty rare that you get something for the whole family that's funny, that's sweet, that's not animated. As much as I love animation, I think it's nice to have. I mean, I love those comedies from like those Disney comedies from the '60s and '70s that they used to make live action, like the Shaggy Dog and the Absent-Minded Professor and North Avenue Regulars, movies like that that were funny and sweet and great for the whole family to all watch together. The Parent Trap, stuff like that. And I wish that, and I'm hopeful that with Disney Plus, that we start to get more of those kind of films, because for a long time the only thing we were getting from Disney was big budget movies.
They were only
Except,
doing like Pirates of the Caribbean and all that other
yeah,
stuff.
I mean, or you obviously have your Marvels and your Star Wars and all that other stuff, but I'm hoping that with Disney Plus they start making some smaller films, some more like family comedies, family dramas, things like Timmy Failure, which I loved, and I almost put on this list, but I was really trying to dig a little deeper.
I have heard good things about Timmy Failure.
I
I haven't seen it, but
Yeah,
I will definitely check it out.
I absolutely loved it. I thought it was so sweet and funny, and I just loved it. And I also loved Togo, which was a drama, but I thought so good. And so that's my hope for Disney Plus, is that we get these smaller live action comedies and dramas. And I think that this one is worth checking out. I'm not saying it's the greatest movie ever made, but it made me laugh. It had a sweet enough message, and it's about a family. So it's something that I think people will enjoy. So what's your number
Yeah.
two?
Well, one last note before I go on. I remember seeing the trailer for Togo, and I was thinking to myself, "Oh, this is what the Call of the Wild should have been."
Yeah, in every way, that's the case.
So, my number two is my choice from Pixar. Now, when discussing Pixar, like Pixar has such a very high standard of quality that choosing anything that's underrated is it's kind of weird, but I chose a Pixar movie that really I feel like doesn't get talked about too much nowadays, and it's personally one of my favorite Pixar movies, and that's Ratatouille. This is the Brad Bird directed Pixar movie that nobody talks about because The Incredibles and The Incredibles 2 are so great. But everyone forgets that he also directed Ratatouille as well. Uh, I feel like Ratatouille is underrated because it is surrounded by so much quality. Like I believe in I believe in a couple years before that they had made or a year after that they would make Up. I had a brain fart there. I'm sorry about
It's
that.
okay.
uh, but it was literally like a guppy in the Pacific Ocean, like in terms of quality. But I've always come back to Ratatouille because I've just thought it was so funny. It's one of the funnier Pixar movies, if I'm being honest. My favorite moment in that movie is when Remy is seasoning the soup, when he's really stretching out his culinary muscles. And he's seasoning the soup, he's making it really good, and he's about to toss in the last of the spices. The music is kicking in, and then Linguini catches him throwing in the last of the spices, and the music just stops. And Linguini's like, and Remy's like, looks at him, and then drops in the last of the spices, and the music goes, plum. I just laugh my head off every time I see that. But it's not only funny, but it also has a phenomenal message of
Mhm.
not everyone can become a great artist, but a great artist can come from anywhere, which
Yeah.
is directly from the monologue that comes at the end from Anton Ego, who
Yeah.
is a very underrated character arc
Mhm.
in Pixar lore because he starts out the movie as like basically what everyone thinks a critic is stuffed into a Christopher Lee action figure. He
Right.
is snooty, nothing impresses him, but then he goes to Gusteau's, he has that ratatouille, he puts it in his mouth, and it's just like a transcendent experience of when he remembered a simpler time in his life. And then he's like, I'd like to thank the chef. And they reveal it as Remy, and then he calmly leaves. He writes up his review saying, not everyone can become a great artist, but a great artist can come from anywhere, and then is promptly fired, which which is just kind of sad. But
Yeah.
to put the period at the end of the sentence, Ratatouille is a Pixar movie that really does not get talked about anymore. I don't know if it's because Brad Bird has really never directed a bad movie, or at least
Yeah.
one that I didn't like, or it's just the fact that, again, it's like a small fish in a massive pond. But I think everyone should revisit Ratatouille because I believe it's excellent.
Yeah, I agree with you. This is obviously a movie that I hold dear to my heart as a film critic. It's something I think about what Ego says with the as critics, that the negative reviews are fun to write, but we must understand that even the 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 biggest trash is worth more than our work designating it so. But then he says, but every critic has the opportunity to be in the defense of the new. He's like, the new needs friends. And I think about that all the time, that hopefully something that I say can encourage people to check out something that they wouldn't have seen otherwise, that they would have not even heard about it, or that they wouldn't have given a chance. Like you here now, you Alexander and the Teller every day, like you live for those moments as a critic where you can introduce somebody to something new. And think about the people I've introduced to your name, for instance, which I love. And that's where the rewarding situation. And it's just important to remember that, like, even people that make something that I think is terrible, they've made something. What have I made? And it's a good grounding for me to remember that. And I still need to be honest with my opinion, but I think it just helps to have that in the back of your mind as a critic, that they at least made something. What have I made? Zero. I made nothing.
That is a solid point.
So anyway, I love it. It's a very good choice. Beautifully animated too. I mean, Paris never looked better, which is amazing when you think about it coming from the perspective of a rat. And I hate rats. I hate rats so much. So that's the only thing that's hard. Like the scene at the beginning with all of the rats in the house. That's a lot for me. I hate rats so much.
You and Indiana Jones's father should get a drink sometime.
Ew. I hate rodents so much. Ugh, so gross. But anyway, hopefully with the new Ratatouille ride at Disney World, that they will the movie will get a bit of a bump. So
yeah, here's to hoping.
Yeah. But anyway, very good choice. Okay, my third choice is from the Disney Nature family. And a lot of people probably haven't seen these movies, and you really should give them a shot. They're so entertaining and sweet, and kids will love them. But the one that I picked is, I love the Crimson Wing one. It's so good. But the one I picked is Chimpanzee. And the cool thing about Chimpanzee, I won't give it away. I won't be a spoiler, because something happens that nobody expects, which is so exciting for a nature movie. Like literally at one point they have to have Jane Goodall come on, and she's like, this never happens. This isn't a thing. This is crazy. And everybody is just like, all the filmmakers are just shocked, and it's really cool. I mean, just that nature could surprise you that way. And sometimes with some of these Disney nature films, they can feel a little a little manufactured. They sort of, like, for instance, in the Monkey Kingdom, there's this whole birthday party setup where there's like a whole cake left out and it's kind of like, I don't think that this was just like organically there. I think they created this situation, with the monkeys. So it can feel that way. And they give the monkeys, or they give the subjects like names, and they try to create this narrative. And sometimes that can feel a little false, a little phony. But in the case of Chimpanzee, because it was just so unexpected, it really works. And I think it's really fun. It's a really fun film. And so people should check it out.
I have a quick story about the first Disney nature movie they released. I believe it was called Earth.
Yeah.
They showed the trailer in theaters like 75 times, and I think I managed to see every one of them. And when the little bird falls out of the tree, and it lands and it walks off, for some reason that always gave me nightmares, because I always thought that the bird was hurt or something, and I didn't want the bird to be hurt because it looked so adorable, and I'm getting a little weirded out just thinking about it, because I didn't want the bird to be hurt. Someone save the bird.
Yeah. I mean, those early ones, I think, were kind of acquisitions from the UK and other studios, and then they started making their own. And and then that's when they got into the real like narrative of I mean, to be honest, Disney made nature documentaries for going all the way back to Walt Disney's time. They made nature documentaries, so it's always been a part of the company. But as far as those early Disney nature films, I think those were acquired from like Planet Earth and stuff like that. So then they started making more of sort of narratives out of them, and those early ones they're a little dry. In my opinion, those early ones, they get a little bit better, but they're always beautiful to watch.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Whoever does the cinematography on all those movies like deserves a raise because
yeah,
every one of those movies looks
yeah.
fantastic.
And you're just
And
watching and you're like, how did they get those shots? Unbelievable. And in the most recent one, the Penguins one, which was pretty cute, there's just this amazing scene with this little penguin that there's this elephant seal, and the elephant seal is so close to eating the penguin, and he like right next to his face, and he just acts dead in the water. And I was like, no way, that's not gonna work. No way, it's this giant seal. And it totally worked. It was amazing. And the seal just like kind of pretty quickly lost interest and moves along. And then the little penguin goes, goes, goes and gets back out of the water. And I was just like, wow.
some puzzles are not meant to be solved.
Yeah, it was so fun. So anyway, but I think chimpanzee and like I said, the Crimson Wing, those are my two favorite. The Crimson Wing, they set it up as if it's like Lord of the Rings with this like narrator, and you get so mad at these birds that are like, and these other predators that are killing the birds, and there's like these tiny little pelicans with they get these salt shackles on their ankles, and they're running along with salt. And you're like, ah! And they've got these like, I forget what the predators were, I can't remember, but these little tiny little flamingos with their tiny little salt shackles, and they're running, and the narrator's like, good and evil persist in the Crimson Wing, and I don't know, it's really good. And so that's what I have for my third one. What do
Yeah.
you have for your third one?
One more thing before we move on. My personal favorite Disney nature one is African Cats,
Yeah,
narrated by Samuel L. Jackson.
yeah, that one gets pretty intense. There's some
I
carnage.
I was going
Yeah,
through a bit of a lion phase back
yeah,
then, so that was like the perfect thing for me. And I
yeah.
specifically remember there was this one part where Samuel L. Jackson was like, he owns the Northern Territory, and I'm like, wow, like who would have thought lions just minding their own business would get so intense? I'm sure that they were thinking like, hey, what are those cameras over there? We're just sitting here in the sun. Like, what? Why did they think this is so interesting?
Yeah, no, that's a good one. It's a very good one. So what do you have at number 3?
So my number 3, coming from the Marvel side of things, this is a TV series called Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes. This only ran for, I believe, 2 seasons, but they were 2 very good seasons. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that Earth's Mightiest Heroes is like the greatest comic book movie television show ever. It's not. It's clearly very much meant for like little kids like going into teens. It's very much meant for kids. It's not matching like the tone of some of the darker MCU movies. But I gotta give this show credit for introducing me to a lot of the characters that I would see in the MCU. I would not have known about Black Panther if it wasn't for this show. He has an entire episode dedicated to him. It's called Panther's Quest, and I learned all about his backstory. I learned about Wakanda, learned about everything like passing down the lineage of the Black Panther, all from that episode. And my enjoyment of the Black Panther movie was upped tenfold because I watched the Panther's Quest episode of Earth's Mightiest Heroes. And when Black Panther appeared in Civil War, I was so excited because I'm like, oh, he was from Earth's Mightiest Heroes. And the show had just wrapped up by that point. But the show also has some kind of darker episodes. Like there's a two-parter called Gamma World, and then they do the entire Kree Skrull invasion, where half of the Avengers turn out to be Skrulls, which they seem to be planting in the MCU right now. So Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes pretty much did it all first. To put the period at the end of the sentence, it's got great animation. It's got some really cool storylines. Again, not the greatest thing ever. It's clearly meant for little kids, but I had a lot of fun with it back when I was growing up, and watching some episodes back for this, I still had a lot of fun with it.
I have never seen this, so that is very exciting. I'll definitely have to check it out.
It's definitely underrated, especially, I guess maybe I'm turning into the, back in my day, our shows were better, but back like today's kids' TV shows, I just don't really think are that good. And this may be coming from, the old man yells at the cloud type of thing, but an old man and I'm 22. But regardless, I think Earth's Mightiest Heroes was just awesome. It should have gotten more seasons than it did, but there we are.
Yeah. No, I've heard some good things about the Marvel animation. That's one thing I really need to dive into more so anyway. All right. My number 4 is a Disney Channel a film from the 80s, actually. And it's a kind of an old school family horror movie called Mr. Boogedy. And if it's not that long, it's just this really fun, if you like sort of early Tim Burton, early kind of maybe the early Universal monster movies, something that's scary, but it's not like too scary. If you're looking for something to kind of introduce the tropes of horror to your kids without like traumatizing them, this is a really good one. I've actually reviewed it on my channel. If people want to check it out, for every year I do a Disney Scares Month, and I've done it now. This 2020 will be my 5th year doing it. So I've reviewed Mr. Boogedy and The Bride of Boogedy, and they do just a really good job of building kind of atmosphere and making it's kind of a spooky sort of haunted house movie that I think that people will really enjoy, because I think it's perfectly fine to introduce your kids to horror movies. You just have to pick the right ones.
Kids are indestructible. You can show them anything and they'll be fine.
And it's directed by this guy named Oz Scott, and I just think he put a lot of fun and creativity and atmosphere into it, and so I think people enjoy it. It's a good little introductory horror movie for kids.
You were mentioning that there was a Mr. Boogedy and a wife of Boogedy. Was there a son of Boogedy?
There should be. Maybe if we get people to watch it, it'll be a demand. We can get a revival. A revival.
Be like the Disney Monsters universe or something.
Yeah. So it's only 45 minutes. So it's not a traditional movie length, but
I had actually never heard of this one until you had brought it up. Like, I was scrolling through the Disney Plus catalog, and I was like, Mr. Boogie, what the heck is this? And then I saw the thumbnail, and I'm like, there's this scarred up guy. He's hooded, and he's got like a green aura around him. He looks like Freddy Krueger's younger brother.
And there's some fun jumps and some fun. There's a backstory to who Mr. Boogedy is, and it's a lot of fun. So what do you have as number 4?
So jumping off into a galaxy far, far away, this is my Star Wars representative. And Star Wars is a bit of a hot topic nowadays.
Yeah.
And finding one for here was pretty tricky, because in terms of like Disney Star Wars, like there's not a ton of content out there. Like most of the movies are pretty well respected by literally everyone.
Right.
So I was looking through, and I finally decided to just go with my gut, and my choice is Star Wars: The Clone Wars, the television show.
Hmm.
This was one of the first TV shows that I remember setting time out of my way to watch every Friday night. I watched all the seasons with my dad. It was like our little tradition. And they would always announce it like on their Friday lineup on Cartoon Network, and Star Wars: The Clone Wars always kicked it off. It was on at 8 o'clock every Friday night, so I never missed it. And this was before DVRs, kids. If you missed it, you missed it. Like it was off in
Yeah.
the ether, and like the great like
Unless you
place
happen to get
where
it on VHS on recording, that was always really
yeah.
exciting.
Now, kids, if you don't know what VHSs are, they're these little blocks with tape inside of them, and you could burn
That's right.
onto there and could go back and forth. But anyway,
Miracles.
in all seriousness, though, Star Wars: The Clone Wars came around at the right time for me, because I remember watching the prequels and initially loving them, but then it was like, yeah, and then it was like the more I thought about it, the worse they got. Like I was in a period of I loved them, then I hated them, then I couldn't even stand them, to the point where people were complaining about The Last Jedi being like the thing that killed Star Wars. No, the prequels killed it. Like I was one of those people.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But around the time of The Force Awakens, or well, actually, no, that's wrong. Let me back that up. By the time the Clone Wars came out, like I was kind of done with it. So like when I watched the Clone Wars, I was like, wow, these are like the prequels characters doing badass things on new planets in like massive space battles. So like this is amazing. And going back and watching some episodes, especially for the final season, which was just released, watching Star Wars: The Clone Wars now, it's brilliant, especially compared to the stuff that we have now. But that is another conversation for another time that I would prefer not to think about right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't seen the new season yet. So I'll probably be doing that. And I actually haven't watched all of it, but I've watched enough of it to know of the Clone Wars to know that it's really well done. I loved Rebels. I was a huge fan of
Watch the
Rebels.
first season of Rebels all the way up until the season finale, which I won't spoil in case anyone hasn't seen it. But what makes the Clone Wars so good is that number one, they took the characters of the prequels that were not really done all that well,
Mm-hmm.
and they had their strengths absolutely magnified. Anakin was just awesome. Obi-Wan was awesome as well, as he usually is. And they made a new character out of Ahsoka Tano, who eventually became my favorite. She started out as kind of like the whiny apprentice, but by the end, she was like wielding two lightsabers, and by the time
Mm-hmm.
Rebels rolled around, she was like she was
Awesome.
amazing.
Yeah.
And not to mention the fact that the Clone Wars actually made me care about the clones. The clones look exactly alike, and they made me care about Rex and
Mm-hmm.
Cody and Wolf, and they had entire storylines with just the clones, and they
Yeah.
were amazing. There was this one episode, I can't think of the name of it right now, but it's about a clone deserter who goes off and starts a new life for himself, who
Yeah.
has a wife and kids. And it asks the question of, is this war truly worth it? And if so, when does it end? It's like, it's really deep stuff coming from Star Wars at a time when Star Wars morale was at an all-time low. I mean, even lower than it is now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good choice. I think that Clone Wars is great for those established characters, and Rebels is great if you just want totally new characters. I mean, there's cameos and few little things, but for the most part, it's these new characters, and it's just really well done. I think that Dave Filoni is as close as what Star Wars Disney has right now in kind of my idea of what I wish the Star Wars to be. I think he
he
gets it.
doesn't he doesn't get enough credit.
Yeah.
Like I loved the Clone Wars animated movie that was released
Mhm.
basically as a prelude to the Clone Wars TV show. He was one of the main creative forces behind the TV show, and he was one of the main creative forces behind The Mandalorian, which is, in
Right.
my opinion, the best thing that Disney Plus has produced as of yet.
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
like, the dude does not get enough
Yeah.
credit for all the goodwill that he is doing,
Yeah.
because certainly J.J. Abrams isn't, but that's, again,
Right.
neither here nor there.
Well, so my fifth choice, final choice, is a movie from 2016 called The Queen of Katwe. And one of the cool things that Disney did for a long time is these like little sports movies. It was like their one little film that they would do every year or so. And they're almost all good, whether it's Miracle or Million Dollar Arm or here Queen of Katwe. And this is, I mean, it's loosely, as far as if you consider chess a sport, but it's in that family of those kind of movies. And Glory Road is, there were a bunch. And this movie, I think, first of all, like so often we see these kind of these I don't know what you call them, these slums, but that seems not the right word, but these with these like little kind of houses in that are made out of tin, the shacks kind of that are made in, and there's just like assumption, there's this assumption that people that live that way must be like miserable, if that makes sense. And what I liked about this is it showed that people can be in less than ideal situations as far as housing and still be positive and still want good things for their children, and still, like, I don't know, I just thought that it was a really human portrayal of these characters. And Lupita Nyong'o is the mother, and she is so good in it. And David Oyelowo,
Oh,
he
Yellow O.
yeah, he plays the kind of the teacher who ends up finding this chess prodigy in, and he's great. And the young woman who the actress, she does such a great job. And her first film, she had never done anything before. And there's a couple different parts of the movie that are completely devastating, that you think, like, how can things possibly get worse for this family? And then something will happen, and it goes to some pretty dark places, especially for Disney, where there's a scene where the mother is kind of tempted to basically become like a mistress to this man so that she can pay to for the expenses for her daughter to go to this chess championship. And then also, like, her daughter, the girl's sister, is basically kind of, for lack of a better word, kind of prostituting herself, and with this man. And so there's just a lot of pretty deep stuff. Like, it's not like it's all kind of kept under the surface, but it's there. And just a lot of challenges, a lot of hard things, but it's also very hopeful, and there's a triumphant feel about it. And I just love it. I think it's so good. And it's just one of those movies that fell through the cracks that nobody saw. But it's got great acting. It's really well made, and it's an inspirational story, and it's a chance to see, I think, a whole different nation, a whole different way of life in a maybe a different light than you'd ever seen it before.
Yeah, I remember when this movie came out. I remember it specifically because it came out in like the first or second month that I had started working at my local movie theater. And
Mm,
I remember when it came out, I was like, I only saw like a couple scenes of it, but I remember those scenes specifically, including Lupita and Nyong'o. And I was like, wow, that Lupita and Nyong'o is awesome. She's
yeah,
going places. And of
she's
course,
so good.
nowadays, she's been in Us, which I was not a big fan of, but I thought she was absolutely the best
Mm.
part of.
Well, and of course, she's
And
Academy Award winning actress
of
in 12 Years a Slave. And
absolutely.
and David O. He was Martin Luther King in
In
Selma. He's a
Selma,
great
which was really
actor.
good.
Yeah. So
He
it's
was
a
also the corrupt head of the science company that James Franco worked at in Rise of the
oh
Planet of the
yeah,
Apes.
forgot about that. Yeah. So I think it's a hidden gem. I really like it. So people should check it out.
Next week, when we come back and do this again, I may have another sports movie that definitely fell under the rug, but definitely has something for me. But that I'll save that for next week.
Cool. All right. So what is your last choice?
We are going to the wild now and talking about something from National Geographic. And this is something fairly recent from last year. This was among the first batch of content that was introduced when Disney Plus launched, and that is The World According to Jeff Goldblum.
Mm.
I love Jeff Goldblum. He is I think that he is an awesome actor. He's been in so many movies that I love, like Jurassic Park, Independence Day, The Fly. He's in the MCU now. So like the dude has had like a career resurgence. And in this show, he's basically like he has a childlike whimsy about everything that he sees. He's like, "Oh, what does this do?" And like the dude has more money than I will ever see in my lifetime, and yet he consistently has a boundless imagination and just a natural charisma that I wish I could have. If you're going to start off with an episode of the show, I would recommend you start with the ice cream episode. That is my favorite. He goes to the Ben and Jerry's factory. He sees the flavor graveyard, which is hysterical. He goes to this little ice cream place called Salt and Straw, where I believe they make this ice cream involving crickets, which sounds disgusting, but there you go. Uh, the World According to Jeff Goldblum is just it's just a really cool show. I've always loved shows where people go to different places and like ask like how that's made.
Yeah,
Like I remember one of my favorite shows growing up. I'm not sure if you've heard of this, Rachel. It's a show called Globe Trekker. It's
I
like
haven't.
this one person will go to like a country and they'll just travel all around and they'll explore all the stuff around it. Like I remember there was this one British gentleman who traveled all throughout the UK. He started off at the White Cliffs of Dover and he just worked his way through, and they showed how they made pasties and it looked amazing. So
Yeah.
period at the end of the sentence, The World According to Jeff Goldblum was just a lovely show, and I heard that it just got greenlit for a second
Oh,
season,
fun.
and I cannot wait.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. And so, yeah, I also, like you, love seeing how things are made. In fact, even when I was very little, I used to love on Mr. Rogers when they would go in the picture, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, and they would go to you find out how something was made. And so I've always been a big fan of that. And yeah, it was a really good show. I mean, he's just so likable that you can't go wrong. So if people haven't seen it, I feel like it was pretty popular. That's my only question with you having it on your list is I feel like, is it really a hidden gem?
Well,
It's okay. I'm fine. But yeah, it was really sweet. I really enjoyed it. So
next week I'll have an obscure one.
okay, good. Well, let us know what you think if you've seen any of these. What did you think? And if you watched them, let us know on Twitter or in the comment section what you think, and we let us know what you think of this whole idea. We're probably a little long-winded. We'll be a little bit better next week as we get the hang of this. But it's been a lot of fun, and we're doing this hopefully to help you. So let us know your thoughts. And so Ryan, how can people find you?
Well, I have a YouTube channel where I talk about movies and TV shows and the like. Just go to YouTube and search Ryan Cam or Ryan Cam Movie Reviews. It'll take you straight there. My channel is about as big as it's ever been. I just hit 85 subscribers, and then someone knocked me down to 84, which was kind
Oh,
of
rude.
sad. But the channel is
Yeah.
growing every day, and honestly, with no new movies coming out for probably the next month, maybe more, I'm going to be upping like my different
Uh-huh.
content. I'll
Yeah,
be
that'll be fun.
doing more videos on the Twilight Zone.
Ooh.
I review an episode of the Twilight Zone vlogs. I've got a new series coming out where I review every movie on the AFI's Top 100 list. It's something that I've always wanted to do, but because, there were so many new releases, I never really had the opportunity to do. So I'm going to be dusting that off and giving it for a spin. And tomorrow or the next day, or I'm not sure when this will be released, but coming soon, I'll be releasing my next video, which is I finally saw Goodfellas. It's bouncing off of
No
a very
way.
popular video that I did called I Finally Saw Parasite.
I
And
just barely reviewed Goodfellas on my blog for my blind spot project just this
oh, you
month
did?
in March. Yeah. I never seen it either.
Wow, really?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Note to self, need a new topic for I finally saw.
No. But that's kind of amazing that we both picked it for March. That's cool. Anyway, cool. I would look forward to watching that. That would be fun.
And then you can find me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at RyanCam20 with the numbers 20.
Cool. Very good. Well, you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and everywhere, and on Rotten Tomatoes. And you can find me at the Hallmarkies Podcast. We're going on full steam, Hallmarkies Podcast. So definitely check that out. And so this was really fun. We'll see you all hopefully next week. And please subscribe to the channel. Give us a thumbs up. Really appreciate that. And if you're listening on iTunes, please leave us your ratings and reviews. That helps us out so much. And then we also have my Patreon group, which is really great. And we have a merch store with tons of fun stuff. So check all that out. It's all in the description section. And thanks again, Ryan. This was really fun. And enjoy Disney Plus, everybody. Bye,
No
everyone.
pressure, but you should totally subscribe to Rachel.
Oh, thanks. We'll see you guys. Bye.